This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Welcome to the NBA Team Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Andrew Reich. I am joined by Adam Murray. Adam.
Yeah.
All right, Adam. Down here in the bottom of the barrel. Let's talk about the Brooklyn Nets a little bit.
We're just getting right into this. There's no intro, no nothing. We're just that's fine. We're just cast off. Everybody's already at sea and everybody's been fishing.
Yeah, I mean, this one, they've been fishing since probably February. They had some moments where they weren't terrible. Like, I think in December, they actually had a 7-4 record. They only won 7 games in January, February, and March. So that's terrible. I mean, Jordi Fernandez, I think, is a good coach. We've complimented him before, but this is the second really rotten year in a row. They tried to make moves. It was going to be hard. The best move they made in the offseason was a trade where they traded away Cam Johnson for Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter actually, I believe, was an all-star. He had his individually probably his best season ever at 24 points and 7 rebounds and 4 free throws a game, three and a half made threes a game. But they kind of shut him down after 50 games.
Well, yeah, because it's tanktacular and you can't have your in there.
And it didn't work out for him anyway. They wound up actually going down in the lottery.
Also didn't work out for was they decided to stand pat. Didn't make moves, which didn't make sense. And then the biggest issue for Brooklyn is not that they had 5 first-round picks and they used 5 first-round picks. It's none of their first-round picks did anything or made any NBA team or moved the needle in any way, shape, or form. That is a problem.
Yeah, they had their very small moments in tank time. Danny Wolf, I think, has the potential to be sort of like, what's a good comparison? Almost like a Jock Landale, where he just seems to just get rebounds and points out of nowhere when you least expect it. Ben Sarath got point guard play. Drake Powell, I barely saw him. Nolan Traore had okay moments. I think he has defensive potential. The one they liked the most was Igor Dremen. He's clearly they all have to work on things, but it felt to me like Dremen had the most potential.
He did, and they played hard, even though they had no talent. They did.
Yeah.
They
were way better defensively than they were offensively. They were like dead last in so many metrics. It was unbelievable. But defensively, they actually didn't play terribly, and they played a little slower.
And that was what it comes down to was, well, why didn't they make a move? What are you waiting for? Like, you have to show some sort of progress, which they did not do in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. There appears to be no plan out of this.
No.
Like, we're going to tank. Well, what's your vision? Do you have a vision? And I don't know if they do.
Yeah, and I believe Sean Marks is still there. He hasn't been let go yet. I do think there is a point with Sean Marks where it's like, okay, what's the plan here? And where ownership, Joe Tsai, where they're like, look, we got to do something here. Something's got to give. I can see a scenario where they help facilitate a trade where they wind up getting a big name and it lands there, even if the player doesn't want to go there. I can see that scenario. They tried to do that with Cam Thomas, where they kind of dangled him out there. And didn't sign him to a new contract in the offseason because he had offensive potential, but they didn't see him as a future star. And they were like, hey, maybe some other team will grab onto him. It never happened. He only played 24 games. He averaged about 15 points a game and they cut him. He wound up in Milwaukee and it didn't even work out there. So the one guy that they really had potential for that they didn't want to keep, he got jettisoned. Noah Clowney, I think, is a good player. I think he actually has potential. The one guy who seems to have good numbers, but I'm not a huge fan of his, is Nick Claxton. Like, what do you think of Claxton? He gets 7 rebounds. He can pass.
He'd be better off on a different team, which is the same thing as Porter. And the thing with Brooklyn is they have to contend next year.
And they have to spend money. They are $20 million under the floor. So
that's irrelevant. You
can take a big fat contract buyout. You can do that if you want to.
Yeah. they'll do that, but they have a pick swap with Houston next year. So they can't be down where they are again because that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't bode well for them. So what do you do with a team that just has money?
You
Like,
try your best to make a case. And listen, I know you're gonna roll your eyes at this, like, oh well, we're New York. I know that's not as attractive of a pitch as it used to be, but you can say, hey, you can be in a big market. You can be our star guy. We'll even move Michael Porter Jr. because actually, I know this. I don't think they'll do this, but he actually has a $12 million early termination option. So if the Brooklyn Nets wanted to do it, they could just buy out Porter and move on. I don't think
no.
they will, though. I
Why
think a
would they?
trade
Because
is
he
more
has value.
right. A trade is more valuable, so they might do that. But I can see Claxton getting moved. Terrence Mann with 2 more years at 15 mil. That's a movable contract. You can
He has
even
no value.
decline the team options on Jair Williams and Dayron Sharp, or pick them up for the little amount of it is and then trade them. So they do have some options. But the 5 picks, the Brooklyn 5, I guess you could call them, they're not going anywhere. I don't think any of them are getting moved in the offseason. I think they're going to have to try to develop them for better or for worse. They had other guys. I mean, they had all the tank teams that we're going to talk. They all had a slew of roster guys that got some moments. Haywood Highsmith, Chaney Johnson looked okay. He was a 2-way player who was a rookie out of Auburn. Grant Nelson, Jalen Wilson's still there. Josh Minott wound up getting shipped over there by Boston. He actually had okay moments. So, there are people that maybe Hernandez is high on. But I mean, I see a lot of roster turnover coming up. I mean, would you agree?
They have to do something, and it wouldn't hurt to try to get a Zion or a John Morant cheap and
And they
try
have
to
the room to make
kickstart.
they have the room to make it happen in terms of bringing in Zion's salary, bringing in Morant's. Like they can make it happen.
Like what Washington did with.
They had so much room they could move 2 people there. Obviously, now they get the number 1 pick, and you feel like things are better.
Speaking of which, let's just move on to Washington, shall we?
Yeah, we can.
Perfect segue.
Washington. I mean, that thing was molasses from the start. And this, I mean, the everybody knows about the fact that they gave up 83 points in a game to Bam Adebayo and the Heat, but that was in March. They had already been in tank mode by that point. That they were 1-15 that month, by the way, the month that they gave up the 83 points. But they were already 2-16. They were
in
water.
Terrible tank mode where you're still having minutes restrictions to 20-year-old kids for no reason. And
yeah. They bring in didn't they get D'Angelo Russell in that trade with Dallas? They barely
and they
played
just
the
said
guy.
no. They just said stay home. Like
pretty much.
You don't
like Jaden Hardy got a cup of coffee, but I don't know if he's going to stay. We'll talk about salaries in a second. Trey Johnson, I think, has a future. He was their top pick in the draft. At number 5, I believe he looked okay. The one I really like, and I know the big story involves Trae Young and Anthony Davis. We'll talk about him, even though that we didn't see a lot of actual Wizard play from either guy. Alex Sarr, to me, looked really good in his second year, his sophomore year.
Of course, he's developing. He always had the defense, so they said
he's a shot blocker. He is a stock guy, meaning he can get steals too. He averaged 7 rebounds a game, which was only second to AD if you look at AD's numbers in Dallas. But the thing is, he only played 48 games because they were tanking. Same as Keyshawn George.
Yeah, and that also just leads a problem with the roster. They have too many young people and too many bodies. So when you add the number 1 pick potentially,
like they have Bub Carrington as a point guard. Well, you can't have Bub Carrington if you have Trae Young.
You have Carrington, you have Johnson, and then you have
Will Riley,
Sarr.
Julian Reese looked great as a 2-way pickup at the end.
Well, you have Riley, you have Champagne, you have Koulibaly. You mentioned Carrington. You have too many bench players now. And you have too many needs for minutes, which we saw in Portland and even like early Oklahoma City was just
Charlotte.
Yeah, Charlotte. You have too many players who are okay, and you can't have 10 developmental players on your team. However, like we said, Washington finally came out of the They said, okay, we're done tanking. We're going to make
Mhm.
an attempt now. We're going to spend. And they
And
were
then they made the
rewarded.
moves. The Trey Young one was first. The Trey Young one was one where, and I do think, Adam, this is an important part of it. I don't think Davis's was the same scenario, but Trey Young chose to go to Washington. Now, some people would say, well, that's just because he wants numbers and he doesn't care and he doesn't want to win anymore. And he had mentally checked out in Atlanta. That's fine, but he did play 5 games, and I looked at the numbers. He shot 59% from the field, 42% from 3. That's 5 games. But he averaged 15 points, 6 assists. He got to the free throw line. It looked like the Trey Young that was in Atlanta, but it does also, to me, Adam, look like a Trey Young that's willing to defer as the top scorer. And then they bring in Davis. Now, what's Davis's mindset as a Washington Wizard? I don't know. He didn't play a game because he was injured when he was traded there. No shock. But Anthony Davis averaged 20 and 11 in Dallas. I mean, you're going to get a good player.
You are, but you're also getting 2 players who, unfortunately, the league, with their financial stingency is not even a word. What I don't cheapness and taxes, those players are no longer going to get the market. You can't put an Embiid and say we're going to give you $70 million a year for 3 more years anymore.
Well, this is
those
the
contracts are not getting handed out for them.
That's what I was about to say. Like, that's the second time AD's contract has been moved in 2 years. He was in the now legendary Luka trade, but now this trade, I'm gonna be very honest. I can't even remember what Washington gave up in essence for him. Like the Middleton deal.
They gave him a first round pick and like salary cap relief.
And it wasn't that damaging, but they pick up his salary, and it is somewhat of a risk for
it is
Washington.
a risk because he wants an extension.
He wants an extension, and Trey Young got what I always call it on this show, the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, where you have a player option and he's going to opt out of it, but he's going to get more years, and they probably already verbally behind closed doors agreed to the deal. So you have to imagine that Trey Young's going to be on the books long term. And at this moment, even before the new Young deal, they're already $20 million below the new tax limit in 2027. So like they don't really have that much wiggle room. And then you win the number 1 pick. And that's a $10 million salary right out of the gate.
Yeah.
But that's a big part of it. You get the number 1 pick. We can talk, we talked about the lottery live watch last week, but have you changed your mind at all about who they want to pick, who they should pick?
No.
Nah. I mean, I feel like Peterson's a safer pick, to be very honest, in terms of upside. But if you pick the Bansa, that you're making a good choice too. Either way.
The Bansa fits Peterson. You have Trey Young and Johnson, so you're gonna put him so Trey Johnson's gonna be a 6 man all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's odd. I get it. I mean, number 1,
and I know you always say you take talent over fit. It's just there's no you need size for when Anthony Davis will be out for 40 to 60 games.
Yeah. I like Kaishan George. I think he's got a future. Defensively, he's actually a good player. I was always higher on Bub than you are. I got a feeling, though, he might get moved because he has numbers that show promise, especially shooting from 3, but there's no room here anymore. And then Bilal Coulibaly, he drifted a little bit in his
he can't shoot
in his second or third year. I think this was his 3rd year that just passed up.
Yeah, his 3rd year he was untouchable after his 1st year,
and now next year as an RFA coming up is going to be the prove it year. So I have to imagine a bounce back year next year for Coulibaly. I see a team that can try to make swings. I just feel like they already made their swings.
They have made their swings, and like we said, there's too many people on the roster to have all these minutes.
Champagny, I think, has a future there as a 3-point shooter. Vucevic is a good player. He was actually so good that Brian Keith was trying to tank, and Vucevic was playing too well, and he would sit him, and he would play Sharif Cooper.
That's why I don't know why they kept him. I guess they're just rewarding him for, okay, you did everything we told you to, so now you show us with.
You're talking about Brian Keith, not Vucevic. You're talking about Keith. I think he's the worst coach. I think he's the worst coach in the NBA, to be very honest with you.
I don't expect him lasting long when they if they get out to a slow start.
Oh,
And
so you're saying Trey Young is going to be on a team that's going to fire their coach? Get out of town.
no, it's not. Trey Young got his coach fired again. It was perhaps you should have gotten a coach more prepped for this team, this
Mhm.
roster construction, as opposed to you've installed. There's a difference between, like you just mentioned, we mentioned first with Brooklyn and now Washington. Brooklyn is losing, but they're playing hard and they're all buying into the defense thing.
Yeah.
There is just loser stink all over the
And they've
Washington
been
area.
they've been a loser team for a while. And I mean, I'm not trying to like poo poo on them. I'm just being real. Like, you look at the record, it's terrible. There were only two teams that won less than 20 games. One was the Pacers, and that's a whole nother story with the Halliburton not playing at all. And the Wizards. I think they'll get out of that dead zone next year for sure. The problem is, how much further can you get, because you don't have that much money to spend in reality, because you got Young and AD now.
Speaking of stink and loserdom, as we had said, we have Chicago, who, in true Chicago fashion, they didn't. We can't say they tanked. They were
I'll say they tanked at the end. That team
no,
did not
no. See,
care.
I'm gonna disagree
Okay.
because they didn't tank. They just held on too long to a team that should have rebuilt and a team that should have tore it down. They sold every piece way too late, like it was a bakery, and all the bread was starting to grow mold, and then they just got
Mhm.
what they could get if they just trimmed pieces, and they traded for literally like 10 guards. So you can't tank if you blow up your roster completely, sell off all the parts, and really only bring back point guards.
So when they started the season, they actually started out hot. Like, they were playing well. Nikola Vucevic was there. He was having probably a career year at that point, with a contract year coming up. What a fall he had. But anyways, Dasumu was there. He played well. Giddy was playing well. I'm trying to remember if they had another guard that they had mixed in there, because they made so many changes in the midseason that you almost forget who was there. Trey Jones is there still, and he's a guard that doesn't shoot, but he gets to the free throw line and plays great defense. And things started to kind of bottom out for them in November. They went 4-10, then they treaded water, and that's when it was in February that they decided to make all the moves, and they went over. They did not win a single game in the month of February, and that was the end for the Chicago Bulls. Tank time was on.
That was the end, and then the trades really showed, and we've gone into it ad nauseum. That's
Yeah,
why, if Jaden Ivey wasn't a part of your future, why would you have traded for him anyways? So it shows
I don't think
you give,
anybody expected Ivy to have the emotional breakdown that he had, though. That was wholly different.
but there was, again, since everybody wants to shovel dirt on on the freshly covered body, they were already like, well, this was happening in Detroit, and this was happening in Detroit, and everyone already knew it. And so it basically came down to, why were you giving up any draft assets for a team who wasn't going to keep them, and you're taking a flyer on him? Then you're just like, oh, we'll just cut him anyways. Like, so
Mhm.
it showed that the upper management had no game plan other than they went in
Well,
four
they had
years
a game
ago.
plan, but even if they did have a game plan, it doesn't matter, because they fired the general managers, or the management.
Because there was no
They
plan. It was
fired
just
Arturis. Well, the main president was Arturis Karnisovas, and I think I'm forgetting his name already. The GM, I think his last name was Beverly. Maybe Mark Beverly or Eversley, something like that. But he got fired too. And they cleared house. They're bringing in actually a guy who worked underneath Joe Dumars in New Orleans. And so we'll see where that goes. Billy Donovan. I'm not sure really. We've heard things. Wasn't there a rumor out there that Jerry Reinsdorf was looking to sell, or am I not
no,
looking at that right? Okay,
no. There was
that could have been a
they
murmur.
everybody wanted him to sell because
Yeah,
what are you doing? You have a
yeah.
prime
That
history, and
might
you're
have been
just
a report that I misread about Reinsdorf, because he's getting up. Let's be real, he's getting up there in age. But basically, they were trying to negotiate Billy Donovan down from a contract he had signed the year before, saying, "Hey, we want you to take less." Billy Donovan's like, "No." I'll just take a year to not coach, get my buyout, and then I'll go wherever I want the next year, whether it be NBA or college again. So they're finding, long story short, the Bulls are going to have new management and a new coach next year.
Again, with the worst possible timing, with lottery reform, you can't even tank because of all this motion. So you have, okay, you got cap room. That's about all you have.
And no, you say that about the tanking. That's true, but they did sneak in. They got the number 4 pick. So we can talk about whoever they'll wind up getting. It could be Caleb Wilson. It could be Darius Acuff Jr. It could be a few people, but they're going to get a good player.
Well, they're going to get a good power forward.
Right.
It'll
something.
be,
they're going to get something.
Yeah. They're not going to, you don't need another guard with all the guards on the team. And then what do you do with Giddey?
I don't know if it's possible, but the Patrick Williams era should be over. Like, I know
he has no value.
I know, but they got to find a way to get rid of his contract is what I'm trying to say. And it's going to be difficult, but they got to get rid of it.
There's nobody to attach him to other than moving down. And why would you want to do that?
Their great weapon is that they have the least amount of retained salary in the NBA at $90 million. They have so much room. They have now, if they want to keep Anthony Simons, who wound up landing there after all the trades, that's fine. Colin Sexton, I think, might wind up staying there. Zach Collins, we'll see. He was hurt all year. Josh Giddey's the one who's set in stone. He's got $25 million a year, which I actually think for Giddey's value is actually even. I think he's a good player. He's not a shooter. Defensively, I think he's solid. He's not as good as people think he is. That's why the Thunder traded him. But he's a triple-double machine, and I think he's a guy you can help. I don't think you can run your entire offense around Giddey the same way Cade Cunningham in Detroit is, but he is a guy that can help facilitate the offense.
Well, you can run it around Bezelis.
He's got a great future.
Have to do.
Yeah, he's got a great future. So
the problem last year was they drafted Noah Asenge, who played 10 minutes before
he was bad.
Tore his shoulder or something. And I mean, it's hard when you get injured. Your debut game almost.
It got so bad that they had to play Nick Richards and Gershon Yabusele at the end because they just didn't have other bodies at the side.
Yeah, that's why. So it's not tanking. It's you.
And Jalen Smith. Let's be real with Jalen. Let's be real with Jalen Smith. It's kind of ironic because Nikola Vucevic was like this, who was ahead of him and at power forward. He's an empty stats guy. You look at his numbers. Oh, he had 10 rebounds and 10 points and 7 rebounds. That man has no effect on the court. Let's be real.
Well, because he's old. That was
and
the
he
problem.
Can't play defense.
He was good, but then he got too old and you held him too long. And all you get is a second-round pick and Anthony Simons, who had a shoulder issue that you didn't check out. And
Vucevic get surgery. You know what's funny? If Vucevic wanted to, he can go back to Chicago.
Well, he'll get the MLE somewhere.
Yeah,
wherever he wants. It
was just bad timing for him in Boston. I actually kind of felt bad for him in Boston. It was just a bad fit and it was bad timing. He hurt his wrist and he was done.
But in theory, it wasn't a bad fit because that's the Celtics just shoot threes, and that's what he did. So,
yeah.
Anywho, the problem with Chicago is they need to hit on something with just their misses.
I think they can sign a big name with a max. They can tease a max contract or a max RFA offer sheet. They can do one of the two.
Well, it depends what their strategy is, which nobody knows. So they are a blank slate, which is better than just running it back every year.
If I were them, I understand they're going to get a power forward in the draft. In free agency, I would absolutely go for a shooter or a couple of shooters. I would kind of follow the same thing that Detroit did, where you have to sign. If you can't grow shooting from your farm system, sign it. Go get them outside of in free agency. All right, Adam, the New Orleans Pelicans. Man, at least they gave up on me early. At least I knew from the outset that things were not going to go well. Willie Green, I think, got fired in November. Or was it December? I can't even remember. That's how long ago it was.
Not playing devil's advocate as I like to do. Is it the worst thing that they tried? Or in Chicago's case, is it the worst thing? Like Chicago's problem was they ran it back and they obviously shouldn't. If we know the Poole trade failed, we know Kevon Looney signing failed, but the Sadiq Bey tag along with that was really nice. So should they have stuck with McCollum and
So
whoever they had, and
so the thing is with, I'll say this, the difference between what happened with New Orleans and what happened with Chicago. Chicago decided to blow it up in the midseason, which we had talked about for years. Like they really need to make sweeping changes. New Orleans made some changes. You talked about Poole joining the team. He was a terrible fit. I think he didn't even play 40 games, but they weren't able to really move anybody else. They weren't able to move Zion, and trust me, they tried. They tried to move DeJounte Murray, and it didn't
did
happen.
they? Well, DeJounte Murray,
He
when
played
he
well when he
got-
came back from injury. Yes,
there we go. He played well. Sadiq Bey played well.
Sadiq Bell played well, and I'm thankful for that. 'Cause
Fears,
remember, we gave up Najee Marshall for nothing, and he's playing well in Dallas. So I'm glad that at least we can say, well, at least we got Bay.
Derek Queen, you like, but
I love
can't
him.
play
I
with
love him.
Zion. That's
And
the problem.
let me be real too. And I know this is a small victory. The Atlanta pick that we traded in what I still believe was one of the dumbest, riskiest trades ever. Joe Dumars giving up a future first round pick unprotected so that they can go back into the first round in last year's draft to get Derek Queen. It didn't come back to get him because Atlanta still keeps the pick, but it didn't go to the top 4. So at the end of the day, I hate to say this, Joe Dumars took a risk and it worked.
Yes.
So
So that's not the terrible thing. And what is it? Micah
Peavy.
Mm-hmm. Shows talent. You have
And Jeremiah Fears is going to be a stud player. I can see it already. He gives off that vibe to me of like, this is a dude who is not scared. Like he is going to play his hardest.
So the problem was you had Zion who played one of his healthiest seasons since he's been in the league.
Yeah, and I mean he played literally 62 games, or 60. I think it was 62. He met his criteria. It's the way I'll say it, because everybody knows about how he has all these clauses about his weight and how many games he plays, and I guarantee you Zion knew exactly what that number was, and he met that criteria. But he looked okay at times. He led the team in free throws, and he shot 60% from the field. He's not a 3-point shooter. That's obvious. My problem with Zion is that it feels like he had no ball movement in the offense. He just seemed to just kind of sit there.
Well, that's what happens when you have an interim coach who
He's Borrego. Yeah.
can only do so much.
Mm-hmm. Trey Murphy III, that's the one that I think a lot of teams will be hunting for. I'm sure Dumars will be curious as to what he can
That's
get
the
in
thing. It's like,
return
why are you
for.
keeping this roster together? Like, you made attempts, but you put the desperation. But Trey Murphy is the people who everyone want. Zion and Queen can't play together.
No, I think Zion has seen his last days in New Orleans. I really, really do. I think they're gonna find a way to move him.
You have a roster who will be in the tax next year, so they have to shave the tax again.
Yeah,
and do cost cutting moves.
They are
which cost them Alvarado
right
for
now.
nothing.
They are 10 million under the limit. So yeah, they have to shed salary. So for example, if they trade Zion Williamson, which is 42 million on the books next year, you have to do your best to have salaries that are either not lasting or draft picks. You have to do one of the two. You're not going to get good players in return for Zion Williamson. That's all I'm going to say.
If you're Brooklyn, why not just Zion for Michael Porter Jr.?
It's very possible. The problem is they have to do that ETO so that you don't have to take the 42 million on the books for Porter. The whole point is that
Porter's not 42 though.
42 million, like he's somewhere in that neighborhood.
I don't want.
He's at 41. He's at 40.8.
But he's expiring, so
that is correct. Just like Jordan.
That's still less. Like you can do that, and you can make moves, and they need to shake up the roster because going the Chicago route, if we're standing pat on a bad, expensive team,
it's not working.
With a fan base who doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can say in the end, like with everything, it comes down to you need to hit on your draft picks because they're cheap. And Jordan Hawkins was just a complete L.
Yeah.
And then
they did have good moments.
Away.
I will give credit to them. They had good moments in February and March. Like they actually had they actually won at one point in March. they won 5 out of 6 games, which I know doesn't sound like much, but it's better than what they did at any other point in the season. And defensively, they were top 10 in steals and blocks. They guarded from the 3-point line well. Herb Jones is a weird guy because it's almost like Alex Caruso, where statistically he doesn't do much, but when he's on the court, he's valuable. He's an effective player. The problem is you tacked on more money for him so that you could get people to stop asking to get him in a trade, because I don't think he's as valuable at $20 million a year in the year 2028 as he would have been at $15 million on an expiring. So now it's really everybody's hunting for Murphy, who's got extra years, but he's a good player. I think he actually led the team in scoring. So at 21 and a half, Zion was 21 points a game. I think the future is Fears and Queen, and I would honestly say, Adam, that everybody else you can negotiate a trade, including Murphy. That would open up the floodgates, and you could actually get some room.
I mean, you should, but they seem to be doubling down Chicago style,
remember, you have no pick. So if you're going to make changes and get another veteran, you got to do it either in free agency, which is not possible, or trade away somebody. So I think we're going to see a scenario where New Orleans trades away something and they either get picks in return or they get very little veteran wise in return. It sounds like an unattractive summer for New Orleans, but if you think unloading Zion Williamson is attractive, you might really enjoy this summer if you're the Pels. I don't think it's doom and gloom for them. I think they have some moments where they look like they have a pulse, especially when Fears and Queen get more playing time. You got to find a way, however, to get rid of Jordan Poole. In fact, I would buy him out. I would just stretch him. He has one more year at $30 million. I would just stretch it.
3 for 10 then.
Yes. And it's on the books for just 2 of the 3 years. So similar to Brad Beal. Well, not as bad as Beal and Lillard. That was like the max buyout. But it's a pretty lengthy stretch, for 3 to 5 years of time. But, I don't think Poole's valuable. I don't think Poole provides anything for the Pels. I just think, he hated Willie Green. He never got playing time with Borrego, which just goes to show that we've had 2 coaches now who did not want to play Poole. Get rid of the guy. Put him on the street.
It's not that they didn't want to play him. It's just at $35 million, it's a lot different than
he doesn't. But that's what I'm saying. He doesn't listen to the coaches. He doesn't listen. So, like, if he's a guy who's going to be a problem child, get rid of him. He's not doing it on the court statistically. He wasn't a guy who just like lit the world on fire when he was. I'm looking at his numbers now. 13 points, 2.5 3-pointers made is good, but I mean he only played 39 games.
Yeah,
he shot 37% of the field.
Got injured, and then just everything fell apart.
Looney, the MLE signing of Looney was a total bust. He barely played. He's got a team option. I would just let that go. Anybody with a team option like Looney, Matt Kovich, DeAndre Jordan, who I'll give him credit. He won one of these kind of like best character awards for the NBA. And I think there is a good chance that this was his last year in the NBA. Would you say the same for DeAndre Jordan, DAJ?
I mean, he's a veteran minimum, and if you don't have a scouting department that can give you a 2-way player who can overachieve to get a contract, you're just sort of stuck with the locker room guy. Your
job was to just teach Yves Messi and Derek Queen the ropes, and I think he did that. Messi was okay. Hawkins, trade him away. He just hasn't done anything. So yeah, they have things they can do, but it all has to be through trades. So Joe Dumars is going to be on the phone a lot.
That's better be. If he can't, run it back.
Well, again. if you remember the meme with him on the phone, it's he has experience.
Speaking of teams that should not be running it back and just defiantly do so, we got Sacramento, whom
this might be the most hopeless team in the league. I'm being very real.
The only thing about them is they have the number 7 pick? Question mark.
Yes.
Their whole thing was we're just 1 point guard away from what we want to do.
To be fair, I know it's not important to talk about now. They do have point guards they can pick there.
That's what I was going to say.
And Flemings.
That will be they will have a choice of their point guard of the future. The
Hmm.
problem is you have nobody else of the future on that team. Sabonis doesn't fit their timeline anymore. People
I
want to hate
gotta.
on him, but
I don't hate Demonis Sabonis. I know defensively he's a sieve. That's obvious. We know this. But Mike Brown loves Sabonis. He's talked about it in
he's
interviews.
defensively a sieve. But let's just say you put him, obviously Washington's spoken for, but if you put him next to a Sar who's just going to be, I'll be at the basket, you can go float out.
Hmm.
That's a perfect fit. You need to pair him with somebody.
I
You
think the
can't.
problem was that you brought in DeRozan and Levine, and they basically were like, "Yeah, we're just gonna do what we always did together in Chicago."
That's We're going to be Chicago, and then Sabonis doesn't play defense well. I know. Let's move Keegan Murray over, who's not a
Yeah.
four,
Malik
and
Monk is
then
miserable there, and you couldn't move him because his price tag was too high.
first, I don't understand the Devin Carter thing. Was where you drafted him and then immediately hated him and tried to trade him like instantly.
I just wonder if Doug Christie is the coach, and yes, he got an extension, and no, I don't think he deserved one. I'm being very honest, but
He
I
did get an
want,
extension. I
or
thought his
he
option
got
was
retained.
picked up.
That's what you're right. His option, he was retained. Long story short, he was retained. He wasn't let go. But I wonder if Christie just didn't like Carter. It was one of those things where he tried him out, and he did average 8 points a game, and he played 38 games. But
So maybe they're
he's not a great player. I'll be very real. He's not a great player.
agreeing with Doug Christie of, yeah, we're sorry the regime put DeRozan and Levine on you. We know you
Mm-hmm.
can't do anything with them. And they unfortunately have to spend this year. Well, they're gonna get out of DeRozan most likely, who's only due what 10 of his 25.
Yeah, he has an ETO, so it's 10 million. It's a $25 million deal, so it's not the end of the world if you keep it. And he's an expiring next year, so you do have options there. DeAndre Hunter, I don't know what injury he had when they got traded away over there for Keon Ellis,
And
and
that's another like you're trading for him. Like, where does he fit in on this team? Like you
mhm.
shouldn't be buying. You should be selling. And then their big free agent splash day one is we need to get Dennis Schroeder, only to be like, yeah, we need to get rid of Dennis Schroeder. We
and
need a point guard.
Yeah, and also that was a weird thing too. You brought up about how Dennis Schroeder was signed, but they also had already had a wink, wink, nudge, nudge with Russell Westbrook with the MLE, and when he goes in, I got to give credit to Westbrook. He played hard. I've never ever said that Westbrook never tries. He always tries. He averaged 15, 5, and 6 assists, and had a triple double a time or two, and had some viral moments. But overall, I thought he played hard. Christie loved him. The one that I'm kind of curious about is Zach LaVine, because he did have moments where he showed that he can be a 1A guy or like a complimentary guy who can really like explode on offense. But he only played 39 games and his player option is 49 million. That is a lot of money to say no to. So I got a feeling he's going to opt in. Like, do you see an opt out scenario there at all for Zach LaVine?
No, there's no chance of him opting out because
Okay.
the only way he'd opt out is if they said we'll give you a 3 year, 3 year
$80 million
extension.
deal. Yeah. Right.
And like, why would nobody wants to do
And
that?
would Zach even say yes to that? He feels like he's still a 1A guy.
Well, he has no need to.
I feel like he might opt in to get traded elsewhere, like Brooklyn
I
or
mean, he's not going to opt out.
no, but he could opt in and agree to a trade, like elsewhere.
Well, he doesn't have a no trade clause. It's just who's going to pay 45 million
Yeah.
other than a Chicago.
And I'm in the minority on this one. I am not mad at the Keegan Murray extension. I like Keegan Murray. I think if he gets more time, say for example, Sabonis actually winds up going elsewhere. If Murray's the top guy, I think they'll be all right.
Well, you played him out of position. You had to overpay to keep him. If you let
He's an
him go,
incredible 3-point shooting big man.
that your team is just completely hopeless. So yeah, you kind of had to pay the bad team penalty. There's no real future and no direction, and you're not okay. You have Caldwell, you have Ramon, you have
Nee Clifford had good moments. And you mentioned Raynaud. I know they tanked at the end, but which meant that rookies got more playing time. Raynaud looked great sometimes.
So it shows you can find these players, and it shows you have an ability to
And
try.
that's a brand new GM that they brought in, Trent Perry. So they're not getting rid of the GM anytime soon.
No, that's what I meant is you're having, as opposed to the previous, well, we need veterans, we need to go all in on this,
Mm-hmm.
which
Right.
bad idea. And things are not looking good in Sacramento at all because you are in the West and you have teams like Utah who are now like, oh yeah, we're coming out. It's just you and New Orleans at the bottom with
Right.
no hope of getting out of it.
Shout out to Todd Weber, my fellow friend who's a Kings fan, and we always talk about we haven't talked much. It's been, with the Pels and the Kings lately, it's been not much to talk about. But anyways, the thing is, they also are at the tax limit because Sabonis and DeRozan and Levine, they're not cheap, and neither will be Keegan Murray for the most part going forward. Obviously, we talked about how they have wiggle room. You don't Levine, DeRozan, DeAndre Hunter, even Malik Monk with a player option in 27. They could all potentially be off the books next summer. This year, though, if they want to make moves, they'll have to make trades. They have to hit a home run in the draft, probably with a guard, you would have to assume. The thing is, too, what sucks about the Kings, and some people might say this is their own fault, they have drafted amazingly at guard. They just haven't retained the guards. They drafted Tyrese Halliburton, traded him. They drafted De'Aaron Fox, good player,
Well,
traded
no,
him.
the problem was they kept doing the same thing, which was what Atlanta did in the 2000s. Of we just keep drafting the same position. You have De'Aaron Fox. That's fine. You
Mm-hmm.
drafted Halliburton. Well, these two can't play together. We need to trade one of the two. That's fine.
Right.
You're making a choice. We will build around Fox. That's cool. Year 3, let's get Davion Mitchell. What are you doing? Like, why? Like, you need to build elsewhere. And then, we said they made an attempt trying to get Chicago West, but you
Mm-hmm.
need to admit you lost and just take the L and then move on. Don't be like, again, like they've done, we need to bring this back. We need to bring this back.
And
Well,
and like and
health
I
was a
think
thing, and then this was an issue, and everything else was an issue. No.
I think you do make a point that their management is not the most incompetent for sure. Like even the table scrap pickups they did, Daquan Plowden, Precious Achua, they produced. So it's clear they do have an eye for talent on the younger side. So in the draft, let's see if that comes back to help them out. They just have to find a way to make sure that they look at their depth and say, okay, we don't really need another big, because they don't. Like, let's look for more guards. Let's look for more wings. They got so desperate at the forward spot, they signed Doug McDermott.
Let's develop an identity, which they need
Yeah,
to do.
and that's going to be a big thing. But Christie, let me ask you this question, because I know this was a big hot topic back in March. Do you think they threw that game against the Warriors?
No, they said the NBA determined it was really bad coaching. The coach
Yeah,
was inept, and I think it would have been better if they just got caught for tanking, like
it did look
Indiana and
bad. I
Utah.
will say, on paper, it did look bad when they had
But
Caldwell.
when they
Hey,
realized
Colin.
when they realized it was just a bad coach,
Yeah.
that's even worse. And why would you want to admit to you're incompetent? And just speaking of incompetence and just the blatant tanking of we're just going to pull every star, like we're going to make it obvious where we're going to be
How dare
bad.
you call Danny Ainge general manager incompetent? Classic Celtics fan.
However, now they're out of it. They drafted Ace Bailey. You have
The pick of the
Keyshawn
litter, I
George.
guess. Yeah.
You traded for Jaron Jackson Jr. You have Laurie Markkinen, who's expensive, and then you're going to have to pay Walker Kessler. So you have a roster who's now shooting up the ladder. It's not just garbage picks, and we'll trade everything for a pick. And realistically, when they broke up the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert team, their
Mhm.
really return was they didn't really do well with it, did they?
No. At the end of the day, because I mean, I don't know if George was actually one of those picks that they got in there, but I feel like Keontae George, who was actually the representative at the lottery, for what it's worth, he has a future. He's like a free throw, get to the free throw line machine. He kind of reminds me, he's almost like a poor version of Shea. if that makes any sense. Like he almost plays similarly to him, where he doesn't shoot the ball nearly as well as him. He's not nearly as efficient as him, but he's just got this way of getting to the free throw line when you least expect it. And he's actually not a bad assist guy, but he needs the ball. They're going to be in a scenario where they're going to probably have to trade off the ball to more of their front court. Walker Kessler only played 5 games, but let me tell you something. He shot 70%. He averaged 3 assists. He averaged a double-double. He could have, like, I mean, that's only 5 games. I understand that. He looked like he was going to be something until he had the injury with his shoulder. So do you think they're in a situation where they look at that small sample size and they say, we can't let him walk for nothing with an offer sheet. We're going to have to keep him.
Well, he's going to be expensive.
Oh, very. He's going to probably get 5 for 125, something in that.
He's going to be pricey. And who knows, somebody puts an offer sheet in for him.
Now you have a very, like you just said, very well. They will now have a very expensive front court between a re-upped Kessler, Jaren Jackson Jr., who actually has 1 more year than Markkanen does, and Markkanen, who's been there forever,
and who all can't. They have to be on the court together. They can't.
But does that mean you're going to trade Markkanen? No.
I mean, what are you going to do? Markkanen has to.
The Warriors have been wanting. The Warriors have been wanting Markkanen for years.
So everybody, there's people who've been wanting for him.
Maybe you call him and ask for Jimmy Butler.
Why would they want Jimmy Butler?
They'll have more cap space after they draft probably Darren Peterson.
But so they're here now. The problem with Utah was Will Hardy was too good, and the team would overachieve so much they had to blatantly be bad.
That's
and then blatantly take out, Oscar Tshiebwe.
Yeah, they had Tshiebwe, Elijah.
Yeah, Harper, and then they'd bring in, then they'd take him out,
and
then they'd put.
They would bring in. They brought in this Yale guard. I remember his name, Bez Mabang.
Yeah,
they brought him in,
and they'd swap him out for Tshiebwe, and he'd play for 12 minutes, and they bring Tshiebwe back. It's like you're not trying. You're not putting out a good product on purpose.
We saw a triple-double from John Conchar. And I'm not trying to poo-poo on John Conchar, but this man should not be playing 30 to 40 minutes a game. Let's be real.
No. So, I mean, it's nice to say we're done talking about Utah being bad, because now that they have to try.
I can't say that for sure. Like, I think that, Will Hardy's a good coach. I agree. The problem with Will Hardy is from an X's and O's standpoint, he was too good of a coach, because
that's what I'm saying. But
and what I mean by that is, like, when the Angels told him to tank, he was too good at tanking. He made it too obvious,
That's the thing. So they need to try, like, they're not going to go the ascended route like San Antonio did, but they should be hovering around 11th or 12th next year. No problem.
Did you feel like winning number 2 was a victory for them? Like, say they don't get the Bansa and they get Peterson instead. Was that still a victory for them?
Of course it is. Their whole goal was to get one of the top 2 picks.
They fell in last year's lottery, and they were furious, that they fell because they had the worst record.
They were, and they blatantly tanked last year too. So now it's nice to say you're spending money, as opposed to you've added 4 more lottery picks and none of them really did anything. And here we are yet again. So
offensively, they were not bad. Like, 3-point shooting wise, yes, but they were like second in assists. Trivia question: who had the most assists in a game this year? It was Isaiah Collier with 23. So, and I don't think Isaiah Collier is a very efficient player at all, but he averaged 7 assists a game. So he clearly has found his niche. Kyle Filipowski has a future. Bryce Sensabaugh is a scoring machine. So they don't have like the most depleted roster of all time. And you mentioned Ace Bailey.
Yeah, so they have things finally to come back to the world, as opposed to you are a bad product and you make the NBA look bad, which they have. Well,
they got fined. They were one of the very few teams, along with Indiana, that actually got fined for tanking, whereas a lot of teams could have, but they were the ones that were singled out.
Speaking of just blatantly tanking, we get to Indiana, who, yes, it's not their fault that their star player Tyrese Halliburton got injured. Yes.
Are you trying to tell me that a team that was 1 win away from an NBA championship tried to throw a season? That sounds like the Chicago Black Sox.
Yes, it is their fault. You had a cheap owner who made you lose Miles Turner.
Yeah.
and then you replace
That was
them
a
with
really bad. That was just. I don't want to say it was a Judas move by Miles Turner. They tried to negotiate him down. He refused to accept it, and that's his decision. It was just tough. It was just a tough break where it was like, we got you right. Like we went to the finals with you, and we're gonna give you this salary. Are you gonna stay? And he said no, because
yeah,
I want this dollar amount, and you're not giving it to me.
we're playing. Why are you playing hardball with me? We wait to the finals. You had Minnesota who just gave Nas Reed more money than you're looking to give me. Like
Yeah.
what? No.
And it was
So
it was hard. It was hard to do. And so Halliburton, you had to write him off automatically to be finished for the season because the torn Achilles happened in late June. That knocks you out
yeah,
for the whole
but
season.
I'm saying because you had a cheap owner, you lose a center. You replace with Jay Huff, thinking that'll solve everything,
Yeah.
and then that ultimately led through injuries and just bad play and their roster. Well, we need to trade for Avika Zubac, who very good player. Okay,
Mhm.
we'll do a spin the wheel, 50% chance we keep it, 50% chance we lose it. That
And they
sounds
lose
good
it.
because we're not gonna lose. What do you mean we lost it? We weren't supposed to lose it. We were
It
supposed to
went it
be,
was a top 4 protected pick and it went to 5. So they lose it and the
which
Clippers keep their
was
pick.
the Clippers had specifically said that we want it between 5 and 12. Anything else is protected, or we'll take your 2029 unprotected. Like, okay, sure. And then I didn't know that would happen. What do you mean? It was a 50-50 coin flip. It was very realistic.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't supposed to happen. But this happened because the owner was cheap, and you had to jettison Benedict Mathurin, who was a great shooter in that system.
Yeah, he was
Because
playing a lot for them before the trade. But he was coming off the bench, and and you saw it in with the Clippers too. That's sort of where Benedict Matherin's sweet spot is. When he comes off as a six man, he's just incredibly like he just cooks immediately, gets to the free throw line. Siakam had a career year, albeit in a bad season for his team. And Andrew Nembhard only played 56 games, but I like Nembhard. When when Halliburton comes back and Nembhard backs him up, look out. Like that's going to be a really tough backcourt to stop.
however, you have a cheap owner
Mhm.
and
And they're in the
you
tax.
need
They are right
they're
at the tax.
in the tax. So that means Obi Toppin has to go. He is the most, yes,
They signed him to a new deal, but it's a friendly deal. It's like 15 million.
it's a
So
friendly deal, but they don't have money for him. And if you're already cost cutting and you just gave up your first round pick for Zubac, you need bodies, and you gave TJ
I
McConnell
think
10 million.
Neesmith
And
is I think Aaron Neesmith's in for the long haul. That's why they tacked on the extra 2 years because they want to keep him.
so what was supposed to be okay, they'll bounce back. They'll have Halliburton, they'll get a number 5 pick
They
who
got experience in tank time for Geraci Walker, who was a first round pick who didn't seem to be doing much. Now he's starting to get more time and he has a future there. Micah Potter, who they picked up off the street, he might wind up on the roster next year. Cam Jones had some decent moments. TJ McConnell's not getting any younger, but he does have a team option after 2027. So if you want to cut him, you can. So they do have a little bit of flexibility, but in terms of
they
but
don't have flexibility because
it
they don't have a
depends
draft
on.
pick.
That's what I was about to say. It depends on Herb Simon if he wants to go into the tax. That's where the
He's
flexibility
not
is.
gonna because he played his cards there playing hardball this way, and
Mm-hmm.
that led to the trade, which led to, well, now there's really,
The
you
only thing
have
you
to.
can do is do a sign and trade involving Nemhard. I would not do it. I would keep Nemhard behind Halliburton, but that's just the only way you can make it work.
Do we have anything else on Indiana? It just seems very.
Well, their season was so odd. Like they just had so many guys shuffle in and out. If you look at their basketball reference, I think they had 40 different players play on the team. You know,
Yeah.
it was nuts. Like
Well,
Garrison Matthews played on the team. So I just don't know who's going to stick. That's what I'm not sure of. I think Jay Huff can stick. Furphy tore his ACL late in the year, so he will be a late rehab. Quentin Jackson, I'm not sure. Ethan Thompson, I'm not sure. Kobe Brown was one of the guys that got in the Zubac trade. He actually played efficiently down the stretch, so he might actually stick around. But Rick Carlisle's a good coach, so they're going to figure out a way to win.
Yeah, he does overachieve. Just speaking of teams who um, have health issues and have always had health issues, Memphis just
Mhm.
never figured it out, did they? You can't even say you're tanking if your entire roster is always injured every year, all the
Yeah.
time, and you put all your eggs into the Zach Edey basket, and he gets injured yet again, and you have, well, we're looking to trade John Morant, and he gets injured again, and just everybody's injured. So
Yeah.
for all the scouting and great bargaining and talent acquisition, it's hard when you're just playing 10-day contracts early in like December.
It was tough for them. So John Morant was already in a quandary where he was not on the same page with Tomas Solo. And what do I think of Tomas Solo? It's hard to say because the thing is, like they did try to do a different version of that no screen offense and all that stuff. And I don't know if it's fair to say that they changed it up too much because Morant didn't play that many games. He played only 20 games. So, and some were involving suspensions and some were involving injuries. And he shot 23% from three. Is it possible to say? I know he had a rookie year, but do you think this was the worst year John Morant ever had individually?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
because he got his coach fired. He tried to get this coach fired
And it failed.
already. It
Mhm.
failed, and then he got injured,
He got into
and the
that argument with
style,
Vince Williams the third in I think it was in Spain or in France, one of the two.
yeah,
It
and
was not a good look. Not good.
so of course it's bad as you have an image problem and you just do absolutely nothing to try to rehab it. But Memphis decided to finally pull the reset button, which I don't think any of us had that on our bingo card.
Trading as in trading Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yes, and we're gonna get rid of Ja, we're gonna get rid of Jackson, we're just gonna blow everything
Oh,
up.
they haven't gotten rid of Ja. He's still there.
That, but I
So
meant the we're going to, and then the only
yeah.
deal was the only offer was Sacramento was we'll give you a first and Devin
Yeah, I,
Carter.
I I think it's similar to another class of 2019 guy, Zion Williamson, where there other teams are asking for the asking price to go down to the point where it has no choice but to go down because the player is miserable. They're making you miserable, and then they're poisoning the well. And I think that's kind of the situation going on with Ja, where it's time to go. Another thing that also might facilitate that is that one of their signings who came in healthy late in the year who played really well at guard was Ty Jerome. So he only played 15 games, but he averaged almost 20 points, 5 assists, and he got to the free throw line. He shot a lot of threes. I don't want to say that Ty Jerome is better than John Morant. I'm just saying they found a suitable replacement.
But was Ty Jerome like, why are you going in? Why are you, obviously it was a mistake to buy, especially if you're going to be dumping everything.
Yeah.
Um,
And then in the trade involving Jackson, you got back Walter Clayton Jr., who I think is a good player. I mean, Utah had to give up something to get Jackson. Jackson was a former defensive player of the year. They weren't like giving him up. Like Utah had to give up something. So they gave up Walter Clayton Jr. Who else did they get? Taylor Hendricks. Um,
yeah, they're just getting random. So yeah, Clayton, who Utah was kind of high on for a minute,
and
and
he played okay for Memphis. So I think he'll be there in the long term. They also scout well. They got another winner in the draft in Cedric Howard. Averaged 13 points and 6 rebounds a game. He's a big body. Jalen Wells, he kind of did the same thing he did last year, which is fine. I don't think that's a bad thing for Wells. It just shows that he's still got a lot to learn. Edie, it's tough to say. He only played 11 games, but he averaged 11 rebounds a game. GG Jackson played a lot more once Jaron was gone. Cam Spencer is a nice player. That's another guy who can play guard, I believe. And I didn't even talk about Scottie Pippen Jr., who was hurt for most of the season.
well, everybody's been hurt for most of the season. That's the problem. So how does the only real question for Memphis is how do they dig themselves out of this?
Well, they're under the floor, so they're the salary floor, so they can do some things, and that's before moving Morant. And you have to imagine, just like Desmond Bain with Orlando, they're going to want picks in return for Morant, and so it's just all going to be built through the draft. Now, I don't remember exactly where they landed in the lottery. I think they wound up 3rd. So they can take Cam Boozer. Do you think it's an absolute certainty, Adam, that they'll take Boozer? Or do you think they could take Acuff or Wilson or Wagler or somebody like that?
I think if they already have a deal for Morant, you take the guard. Otherwise, you take your Jackson replacement because you have to do something.
That's a good point. Like say Acuff or Wagler go 3rd. That's a giveaway that Morant's getting traded. But the way things have been going, it's like I don't know if you saw this recently about the Bucks. The ownership basically put it out there of like, we need to trade him before the draft. And I don't know if that's NFL speak, because we have a lot of these guys who work in the NFL now, work in the NBA offices, and that's sort of the way they work. Like, we need to know how many draft picks we have before we do. So they want to make the trade. But the thing about Giannis is that it's way more complicated because the salary is higher, and a lot of the teams he wants to go to don't have the room. Which I think you can swing a trade before the draft. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that there's teams with room that they can easily jettison him too, and then they can find a guard for the future. I think they can still take Boozer. I think that's still a possibility. I think the playoffs is reasonable for them going forward. I just think they draft well. I'm really sad to hear about the death of Brandon Clark. That's a shame, and it's something that happens to young people, and it's sad. It's unfortunate, but you do have to move on from it. And then Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is still there. He's got a player option at $21 million. Do you stretch him? Is that possible?
I don't. Orlando went and got him, and he didn't do well in Orlando.
They already had to stretch Cole Anthony, if you remember.
Yeah. So they got
they already have dead money.
Yeah, they do.
Unfortunately. But yeah, it's a team that has a future for sure. But they have sent off 3 of the big 3 that they had when they started really ascending in 2022 and 2023. And there's one more that has to be moved in order to really move on from that era. And once Morant gets moved, which we think is an eventuality, that's when we're going to see the real picture for what Memphis wants to do.
So that brings a wrap up to our tanktastic stuff. Yes.
Yes, very much so.
I don't know. Any thoughts? We finally got through these guys and we can finally move past them.
It's weird because starting next year, you can't be the worst team in order to get the best chances in the lottery. It doesn't mean they won't try. Let me be clear. Teams are still going to want to lose. But now you want to kind of like angle yourself towards like being between the 12th worst team and the 10th worst team. That's the sweet spot if you want the best odds. So you wonder if these teams that obviously tanked and gave up, do you think they just absolutely have an initiative to try? That's the question.
I don't know.
Because we've had a lot of these tanking teams where we can clearly see, oh, this team ain't trying. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think every team that we talked about in that class, they're going to have to make moves. Just because of the fact that salary-wise, they don't have enough on the books.
Well, the thing with the flattening, teams aren't going to offer 4 picks anymore, and the draft haul that used to get no longer exists.
Right.
So, I don't know. Either way, we're finally done with these teams and everything.
Now we move on to the teams that will actually tank next year. The ones that almost made the playoffs. Adam, I feel like we're in this class where hope is there, but it feels far away sometimes.
No. We banged through a good number of teams who didn't try or were unable to try.
Yeah.
But at least we have here, there's some semblance of we're putting an effort in. So, all right, let's get to it.
All right, and let's just go ahead and hit the Milwaukee Bucks. There's gonna be obviously it's always felt for the past few seasons, and I think Giannis Antetokounmpo and his will he or won't he nature does have some sort of blame in this, where it's always felt like this cataclysm on the verge of, oh my God, if things go really wrong, Giannis is going to want out. And we've already gone through a whole year of situations where Giannis got DNPs and he didn't want to. And then there was times where Giannis kind of took himself out of games, and Doc Rivers was not holding people accountable for being late in practice, specifically Giannis. All of that type of BS that you hear after the seasons are over. But the Doc Rivers era is over. They're bringing in Taylor Jenkins. That's been agreed upon. What's not agreed upon is whether or not Giannis is going to be coming back to Milwaukee.
So that's why we just kind of have to give a big old incomplete to this one, because there's two separate paths of one with him, one without him. So we've mentioned this so many times with him, and they're already starting it now with the.
That's
Anthony
what I'm trying
Edwards.
to say. It's gone on forever. And the thing about Giannis is that even though he is getting older, I can't guess his age right now off the top of my head. If I had to guess, he's probably about 33 years old. It still feels like, from a PER standpoint, he's still in the prime of his career. He's still an incredibly efficient player. And the timing is right if you're an outside team to try to snag him in a trade.
Well, it's the beginning of the end, because if he wants another,
but now's the time to get him. But if you're an outside team, now's the time to get him.
Yeah, you have a 2-year window of prime. But to be fair, we again, just quickly mention this. We can move on from Milwaukee. We mentioned they tried. They panicked. They got Lillard. They panicked. They dumped Lillard. They tried to get players. None of the players fit. They were unable to draft well, which is ultimately what sunk them.
Their best draft pick was an undrafted free agent. It was AJ Green.
Yeah. You had a coach. Okay, we're gonna bring in a coach who's won a championship. He could do it. Well, he didn't also develop players. Everything they tried didn't work, but they all tried everything. And all we can say for Milwaukee is we can't tell what they're going to do, because we don't know what trade package they will accept for him. And then it will be a lot different. Let's just say it's the rumored Jaylen Brown to Atlanta. Atlanta gives like Dyson Daniels, Rosachier, and picks to Milwaukee. That's a lot different than getting Tyler Hero and Khalil Ware and Jovic.
I don't know who came up with that rumor, but but if that's the case, Boston needs to silence him soon, because that is not a win for anybody there.
But it's a lot different depending upon what trade package you get. Therefore, we just know Milwaukee has hope, because they can now build their future, as opposed to like we had said every year, sort of with the previews and whatnot. Like, you see the huge glass ceiling they have, and there's only so much they can do. And every time Giannis gets hurt, you have less and less of a chance. And
they've tried
where we are.
They've tried to comfort him. Like I thought signing Miles Turner was smart. Miles Turner is a unique player where he's a great shot blocker. He can have great rebounding nights, but he also has games where he's under the radar. He doesn't really do much offensively. He's been in the league for many years, and he has been in the NBA Finals with the Pacers. I like him. He's a very good player. I don't think he's overpaid either. I just think that him and Giannis together was a weird fit, because it's a four who likes to sort of stay in the paint, and the same deal with Turner, but you can't run a double big lineup with the way Milwaukee had, because the strength of the team outside of Giannis is really, they actually developed guards that they had picked up either in trades or waiver wire. Like, they actually did really well with like Ryan Rollins and AJ Green and Kevin Porter Jr. They do have options. Like, if they don't want to keep Kevin Porter Jr., they can cut ties with him if they want, because he's got a player option. If he opts out, they could just say, nah, no, thank you. They can get Usman Dang, who they acquire from Milwaukee. They can acquire him on small money to come back. They have all these other guys that they don't have guaranteed money for next year, like Torian Prince, Jericho Sims, Gary Trent Jr. They don't have the potential to like totally blow it up, because you still got Kuzma's contract. You still got the Giannis contract at around $58 million if he stays. So if you move that deal, you have to take at least $50 million to $45 million back. So you're going to have to bring in salary no matter what. And they were over the cap last year. But the thing is, I do feel like they can make moves so that they can give themselves a lot of space for the future. They also need to just start drafting better. And that's something that's going to come with time. And that's something that Giannis just will not have the patience for at this point in his career. All right, Adam, let's talk about the Dallas Mavericks. No Kyrie Irving at all this season. He had a knee injury, like the torn ACL leading into that season already. And they had Anthony Davis. He played. But things went sideways with the Cooper Flag experiment, just sort of in the infancy. He looked good by the end of his rookie year, became the rookie of the year. But before that even happened, the fans were revolting about the direction of the franchise, how they were trying to tank and all this stuff. And they traded away Anthony Davis. They fired Nico Harrison, which probably should have happened after the Luka trade happened anyways. And now they bring in Masai Ujiri, who jettisoned Jason Kidd. So it's sort of a new beginning, but with Cooper as the future and Kyrie Irving probably healthy to start next year.
But so many other pieces that don't really fit. And having seen,
you got all those other bigs and PJ by the way, I gotta say PJ Washington's a good player. He signed an extension tagged on for 4 years all the way up to 2030. So he's in the fold. And they're coming off of the big money that they had gotten from Chris Middleton when they had traded away Davis to the Wizards. So they have some space to do what they have to do, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, but haven't seen him rebuild the Toronto team. Looking at this Dallas team, there's a lot of pieces that don't fit his previous vision, I shall say.
I'll say this. I think that Klay Thompson might get stretched. I'll say that. I'm not wishing for it, but watching him this most recent year, and he had averaged.
He's expiring next year, is he not?
Next year,
it's the third year.
It's at 17 million, and
so
at his age, that's an overpay. Yes.
At the trade deadline, they will quietly cut him, and he'll go to Golden State to finish that run off. But that's down the line. It's just you have a lot of pieces now, and with Cooper Flag being the centerpiece, that don't fit his vision. So it'll be interesting to see the wholesale changes, which I expect to happen quite soon.
Yeah, and they have athleticism already, and that's something that Ujiri always valued when he drafted in Toronto. Is like he always liked getting athletes, and they got guys like Derek Lively the third. He had a ton of injuries. And he only played 7 games, but he also in the 7 games averaged over 5 rebounds and he's like a block and a half. So he's a force. Daniel Gafford, decent. He's a guy that the only problem with Gafford is that he gets in foul trouble a lot. I like
the pieces are good.
I like Max Christie, who they got in the Luka trade, so he'll always be remembered.
Max Christie was a nice pickup, and then Nemhard as the undrafted,
and then Najee Marshall. That can go either way, because he's got only $9 million left, but he played really well to finish up the tanking part of the season. But he probably had his career high in points and rebounds and assists. 15 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. So he's a guy that I can still see in the fold. That Brandon Williams, the point guard, who was a backup who basically got starters minutes because Kyrie never came back. I mean, I can see those guys coming back, but I can see them getting moved as well.
Yeah, that was just basically all we can say about them is you've literally purged the previous regime out, and then I expect the day one roster, which will be a ton of changes from the last day roster this year to the final day next year. I expect a completely different team every step of the way. Mm-hmm. And I don't expect this to be a slow process and let's get our picks back. I expect, here are my pieces. I need to swap these out fast.
And it was a team, they had a terrible November. They were 4-12 in the month of November, but otherwise until March when they just gave up completely, they had they had good stretches. They had stretches where they actually tried and they had some talent and they played physical. Jason Kidd is a good X's and O's coach. I think that's been proven over the years. I just wonder if it just came down to more of a managerial issue where he wanted more say so in how things were done. And when they hired a really like a headstrong GM like Ujiri and they gave him the keys, Jason was basically like, this ain't gonna work for me. And he's just gonna wait his turn after his buyout is done in Dallas, whenever that is, whether it be this summer, next year. He's gonna wind up coaching elsewhere. He'll get another shot. But I just wonder what it really came down to is that it wasn't like Jason Kidd as a coach wasn't working, because I think it was working and he was dealt a bad hand with the Luka trade. I think what it was is that he wanted more power in the organization and he wasn't given it. Okay, Adam, the Golden State Warriors, man, what an old team. I mean, that's the first thought I have when I look at their roster and I look at their salaries and everything. They did get to the play-in despite the fact that it felt like they were trying to tank their way out of it in the month of April. But, I felt like they really were giving it the college try, even though they probably have kids that are in college now. to try to make the playoffs. But when Jimmy Butler tore his ACL in, I believe it was January or December, that really put a hurting on the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's why this is just sort of a quick wrap up. Is they mishandled Kuminga every step of the way. You have a coach who admitted he can't play young players and can't develop them and has no desire to develop them. So all you had is an aging roster that was top heavy salary wise. And once they went, Quentin Post isn't going to replace anybody. So
no,
and
one of the only ones he wound up liking was Moses Moody, and he messed up his knee. I hope he comes back to be ready for training camp in 26-27 from that, but I'm not sure. That was a pretty bad injury.
And that we had said, Podziemski looked good and he looked like he could ready to take a leap, and then just appeared to get buried just like Kuminga, and then became uneven.
Because he liked Guy Santos. And the reason why he likes guys like Guy Santos and Pat Spencer, Will Richard, is because they do what Steve Kerr asked. And there was a little bit of a Cold War there. A little bit of snipping back and forth behind the scenes about, oh, well, Kerr wants more say so, and maybe he'll go somewhere else. Maybe he'll just retire. At the end of the day, he wound up signing an extension to go back to Golden State.
Yeah, just 2 years. Okay, I know this is, let's just have one last run. And that's what they're going to do. Like we just said with Dallas, they're going to probably jettison Clay and he'll probably go back there. They're still superstar hunting because they know this is a 2-year window, and then everybody's going to retire, so let's just have nobody on the books after 2 years. We can just start the team fresh.
Even if Al Horford opts in, you don't have to keep him. It's only $6 million, though. Same with I think De'Anthony Melton's actually going to opt out of his $3 million, but they might sign him back for more because Kerr, that was one of the players that Kerr really liked. Curry played really well. He was a top line scorer, like in terms of points per game all year long. He only played 43 games. He had hamstring issues. I just feel like it's just one of those situations where age and the track on the tires and a lot of the calf strains and the ankle issues he had in the beginning of his career. It's just one of those things where they all add up. They all catch up to you at the end. He's still an elite player. We saw that in the Clipper game. You do not want to see this guy go off in a must-win game because he's scary. But he shot 39% from three, which is excellent. But you do get scared about, man, can he really play more than 60 games in a season now?
They just need to pace it correctly, and you could do it. But yeah, either way, you'd like to see some changes made, but we just know they're going to go double back and just get older. And
I think they're going to get Porzingis back somehow on lesser money. He just finished his contract where his last year's salary was $30 million.
Yeah, and he's
unrestricted. I can see him signing back. Everybody knows he's got a chronic illness, an undisclosed chronic illness that will limit his availability pretty much for the rest of his career. But I can see him signing for like 18, 2 for 36, something like that, or even less than that. I don't know. Jimmy Butler, I don't know. I don't know. Like, can they run it back with Butler now that Kerr's staying put? Yes, I think that's probably the most reasonable move.
They
But
have no other choice.
but
His
if I'm Mike
salary,
Dun,
you
but if
can't
I were
move.
Mike Dunleavy and I got permission from ownership, I would think about stretching. I would have thought about stretching him for like 3 more years and just try to go for it either in the draft, get into the draft somehow, or try to do something else. You can't trade Butler's contract his last year of his deal. No one wants it. I mean, maybe they can see the value in Jimmy Butler with 1 more year.
Well, we saw how they tanked the value of Kuminga and then got an injured Porzingis, and that didn't help them either. So, anywho, I wouldn't look to the GM to bail them out and trades and everything else. All you could do is just hope.
They're already over the salary cap, including Butler's contract. That's why I'm thinking if they just do a buyout, they could get under the cap and do some things for themselves. But that's at the risk of losing Butler. And
you lose Butler and you have no replacement for him.
right.
If you had Kuminga and then you could give him his minutes, it would be different. But you literally have nothing to replace him with. So,
and they're not good. They're not bad enough. That's a better word to put. They're not bad enough to go high in the draft and get a good player to replace them. They have to get all these kind of bargain basement players. And those are the guys that Steve Kerr and Draymond Green, they just like. They like the Quint Posts and they like the Alex Tuhees and the Guy Santos because they're dogs. They play like dogs. And those are the guys that they always value. Draymond, I'm not going to keep going with this. He's got a player option at $27 million. He will obviously opt into it. I do not think he's getting traded. If he gets traded,
I don't know if he'll opt in.
I
I think he might opt out and be like, give me 2 for 50 or, 2 for 46 or something.
that's possible.
Get an extra year out of it.
What I'm saying is that I don't see a scenario where Green is not a Warrior next year. I think he's going to.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say. I think he just would be like, I will give a discount. Give me an extra year to line up with Steph, as opposed to I'm getting 27 and I know past that will be even less.
If you're ownership for the Warriors, I think the quandary is like we can keep Curry and also he is extension eligible at his age. I believe at the age he's in, which is past 36, you can only sign a 2-year contract. You can't sign a 3-year contract after age 36 in the NBA. So I think that's a situation where Curry is probably very likely to sign the extension to get the extra money for 2027, 28, and 28, 29 to get the max, something around 60, 70 million. And that would probably be the end for him. I don't think there's going to be any additional years after that. So that might give an end game in terms of how much more years that Curry will have left in the NBA. But I don't see a scenario where Curry puts the pressure on Mike Dunleavy to try to improve the team. I think Kerr coming back was a big sign of, no, this is what we want. And if we
need to run it back, and that's all we can do.
And if we don't win the championship, if we don't have a championship caliber team with Curry, with Kerr, with Draymond, and Butler coming off injury, that's okay. At least we're a competitive team. All right, Adam, let's talk about the Charlotte Hornets. A little bit of a whirlwind for this one. They started out a little slowish, and then they got red hot in the month of February, did well in the month of March. Con Knipple was on a 50, 40, 90 streak where it looked like he might actually steal Rookie of the Year from his former Duke teammate, Cooper Flagg. Didn't wind up happening, and they had also a very bipolar play-in performance where they had a thrilling overtime win against a Heat team without Bam Adebayo, and then they got absolutely blown to bits in Orlando to get knocked out.
As expected with a young team who didn't really know what they're doing. Again, this was the feel-good story of the year. They finally put things together, and they weren't tanking per se. It's just they weren't trying let's bring in free agents. It was just, we know we're going to draft in the top 5 again. We know we're going to have this, and you had to wait for the pieces. Basically, I think what it came down to is you had a healthy LaMelo Ball because he hadn't been healthy really prior to, and we knew how good he was. It was just he never could be on the court the whole time. And the year before,
I don't think he made All NBA, but I could have made the case for him. talk about LaMelo Ball.
But there were so many other names much above him, and especially if you with these 65
but
games.
yeah, 20 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, over 3.5 threes a game. Like, he had a very good year.
Going into the season, we had said the biggest issue in the previews was you need to add shooting. And what do? You get Concanipple, who solved your shooting problem as the new Klay Thompson. So you now have this nucleus. And then, well, it's like outside of Miles Bridges, who's now a free agent, it's like, okay, we got Ball, we got Miller, we got Knipple.
You might be able to keep Kobe White, who played very well for them.
We're set with our core. Let's just build on these good vibes. Let's not do anything hasty. Let's not make bad decisions. So I think let's build upon this, like Toronto kind of did the last year. Like, okay, we have it. We know what to do. Let's grow. So yeah. I think that's the best case.
I think for Charles Lee, there might be some doubling down on shooting because they found success there. They don't. Josh Green and Grant Williams combined will have $29 million on the books. If you want to make any types of major moves, because they're at the salary floor already going into the next season, so they already had cap space. But if you want to get a max player, you got to move one of those deals for and add a draft pick to it to make it attractive. I can see. I think you're onto something. I think there is a scenario where Green, who played a lot of minutes because he's more of a veteran, and Grant Williams also a veteran, that there's a scenario where they'll stick around at those salaries and maybe they'll trade him at the deadline. You do wonder, like, are they gonna stand pat with Tajani Solone, who had good games but for the most part had like disappearing acts, and Trey Mann, who he kind of got his minutes marginalized by the arrival of Kobe White. Kobe White is interesting because he started out red hot for the Bulls. Then he dwindled a little bit. He gets traded to Charlotte and he played great for Charlotte. But you wonder in the open market as an unrestricted free agent, will Charlotte, at what price will they go up to keep him? Like, will they go above $25 million a year, which is more than what Miles Bridges makes, and he's going into the last year of his deal next year. I think the number one priority, other than Kobe White and whether or not you can retain him or re-sign him, is getting a rookie max lined up for Brandon Miller, who is very important to that team. Miller had shoulder problems, but I do like him a lot. I think in the the 2 play-in games, he and Knipple just struggled. I think it was just one of those situations where this is the first time they were in the playoffs and they were actually being hunted by the opposing team. They didn't know how to react to it. But I do think that Brandon Miller is a really, really good player. I think he is deserving of the rookie max. Would you agree?
Either way, I wouldn't go that far because.
So you think they can get him for? So you think they can get him for maybe like 4 for 125 instead of 4 for 175?
I don't think it's 175. I think he could 160, 150 because the first 2 years he ended with injuries. So this was only one healthy year. And then that's sort of the Zion thing is, well, you have one healthy year. We need to pay you or it's trouble. You can also, the way it seems like the things are going now is just let him go to restricted free agency and just match the lower max deal as opposed to the 5 years. And
the problem with that is that all these teams, they sniff out immediately, oh, if this is the number if we give him this offer sheet, he's not going to sign it because he already has been told by the Hornets that if you sign that, we'll match it. So basically you're going to have all these offer sheets on your table and the player will never sign it.
Yeah. So I don't think they need to max him out. He just needs to stay healthy for more than one season. And that's again, like I said, just don't do anything rash and just sort of.
They also drafted really well last year with Kalkbrenner and Sion James underneath getting Knipple. So that shows that they have competency as general management and scouting. And I believe they do have more than one draft pick in the first round this year. I think they're lower ones, but they might be able to get some hits with that and add to the nucleus. But the plan now, obviously, you made the play in. The plan is now make the playoffs, but with the same nucleus. All right, Adam, let's talk about the Miami Heat. Obviously, the highlight of the season was Bam Adebayo getting 83 points in a game. I know that it was against a hapless, terrible, pathetic Wizards squad, but that is an incredible accomplishment that will never be forgotten. I don't even know people will remember the fact that they lost in the play into the Hornets. I think people are just going to remember the 83-point game, to be very honest with you.
I think I will just sum up the Heat this way. Yes, you will. You'll remember the 83-point performance. However, I think this is the year we could say the Heat culture magic kind of wore off, and the team was just exposed as, yeah, we're just not a good team, and we can't play that 8 seed every year and get really better. The same way kind of Chicago was, yeah, we're fine being the 8 seed. Whatever happens, happens. And it no longer works for Miami. And much like Milwaukee, I think I'll have to give them how do you move forward? Well, it's going to be an incomplete because obviously they're star chasing with Giannis or some other superstar to pair. But you get the sense that there's going to be wholesale changes before the start of next year.
Yeah, I do. I see sort of. I think we're in the phase of the Miami Heat that we were in when, if you remember, they were in a situation where they were doing the same thing that they're doing now, where they were just floating around as like a 7 or an 8 seed, making the playoffs and losing in the first round, or barely missing the playoffs with a bunch of chicken scratch. And Pat Riley finally had the cap room in 2019 after Dwayne Wade had retired. And they just said, all right, we'll take a swing. And they signed Jimmy Butler, who had just finished up his last year with Philadelphia. And I can see a scenario where Pat Riley takes a swing. And I know there have been rumors that like Riley might be retiring. He's getting older. He's not as motivated as he used to be. But I do believe that Miami's brass is going to be in a position like there's a feeling there of like we have to take a swing because we can't just keep trying like, oh well, let's use different X's and O strategy. Like if you remember the start of the season, it's like, oh, our offense is cooking because we're not using screens. We're just planting people at the 3-point line and doing ball movement stuff. And that worked for a little while until it didn't, and they wound up having to rely on their defense again. I think they would have, to be very honest, I think they would have made the playoffs if Bam hadn't gotten hurt in the Charlotte game. I think they actually would have probably beaten Orlando anyways, but that's neither here nor there. I like a lot of their roster. They know how to develop them. They always have. It's been sort of that's been part of the Heat culture narrative that they always get these like small hits like Pelly Larson, Nikola Jovic, and Drew Smith, and Jaime Jaquez, who had he had a beef with Eric Spoelstra over a personal issue, but that got resolved, and he had a very good bounce back year. Davion Mitchell, who they got off the table scraps, and he's played really well for them. But I can see a scenario where they're like, you know what? Let's just go for it and try to get Karl Anthony Towns or Giannis Antetokounmpo or somebody like that. I can see that. Like it's something that is possible, and it's something that, from a salary standpoint, they probably can fit into their portfolio. The problem is they're going to have to unload probably Andrew Wiggins. They'll probably have to move Jaime in the deal, and they're going to have to get creative. Do you think they're that?
They got to do something, like you said.
But
yeah.
Here's my point. Do you think they're that forward thinking in terms of player movement of like, we really need to take swings?
Yes, because the mystique has worn off, and it's just like, yeah, you have this roster. You're not intimidating anybody really anymore with that. So is your goal to be your ceiling a 6 seed? Like,
yeah.
You're not going to push anything with what you currently have.
And obviously we know how good of a coach Spoelstra has. Like Norman Powell, the thing that was weird about Powell is that once Hero was healthy, they kind of like Powell lost some of his minutes. And I don't think he was happy about that because he was an all-star at the break. So, but he's an expiring his unrestricted free agent coming up. So I can't guarantee if Powell's going to stay. I can see Wiggins getting stretched, possibly. I don't think you can move.
You just love cutting and stretching everybody,
because this is the way to do it. This is the way to get the salaries, that lesser salaries on the books.
You can trade Wiggins.
And
That's not
the other
you.
reason
It's
why
not a negative
and the other
value.
reason why I'm saying stretching is that a lot of these teams, they didn't want to do these things at the time because it would hard cap them. Now hard capping doesn't matter because the hard cap is basically the second apron anyways, and nobody wants to go past it. So you already have like this idea in mind of like, we can't go past this number. So if you restrict yourself by doing buyouts, who cares? That's why I'm saying like you're going to see more and more of these buyouts is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
But that's just my thought. I mean, I could be totally wrong, and they'll just Wiggins will opt into the 30 million. They'll just eat it, because he had some.
You can move Wiggins. You're acting like Wiggins has negative trade value.
He does.
Or no, he's still talented. He's a nice complementary piece that you could get things for. Is he a centerpiece? No, but I don't think it's something we need to attach multiple firsts to get rid of him.
If you ask Miami fans who they want to move, it's Hero. But I think Hero is a very good player, and I don't think that's a smart decision.
Oh no, they want Hero out. But let's just agree. We know major changes should be done this offseason.
Yeah, and they have, and they're able to develop the players in order to make it an enticing package for, Milwaukee or Oklahoma City or like some kind, or the Clippers, like some kind of crazy team like that wants to take a swing as well. So they have the room to make it. The one guy I really like, and I don't know where his value is going to be on his next contract, but I think he's going to be a star, is Khalil Ware. That's a guy who I absolutely would not even consider trading. All right, and the Toronto Raptors, I got to tell you, I felt like this was a team that at full health could be really good. And if they don't go far, that the people that run the Raptors might not buy into the fact that this starting five has a high ceiling. But I kind of turned around after the playoffs because they were without Quickly. They had Brandon Ingram stepped out too with an injury, and they played really well. And Scotty Barnes showed the flashes of a superstar leader. They got some really good play out of their rookie Colin Murray Boyles. And I'm starting to wonder if they're going to run this back again next year.
They don't really have much choice because you're not going to trade Scotty Barnes.
They're only $15 below the luxury tax right now.
Ingram, they just signed. RJ Barrett, I don't know his value. Quickly has no trade value. And Pirtle, you have to attach numerous picks to get rid of that contract.
Because they added more money to they added like 3 more years to his deal.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense. And that was, we had seen that with their strategy of let's get all these players, let's give them
the guy whose contract expires first is Barrett. And because he earns 29 million next year, he had a great year. He did. He had a great year. In his case, a lot of people remember the shot where it just bounced like way up in the air and just dipped in, and they won Game 6 against Cleveland. They did lose Game 7, but I felt like that series was a coming out party for Barnes, who was already set on a rookie max deal, which already kicked in, but. I saw some people complaining that maybe he should have been all NBA this year.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of players had arguments for it, and he's shown why he's the center of that team. However, with bringing this group back, you can say what really is your ceiling? Like, how much can you improve? Going into this year we see the vision. We just need them all to be healthy. Okay, they are healthy. We know what they can do. What else can you do? You're now through the rebuild where you had Walter and Dick, and you had to choose one of the two, and they have.
Mm-hmm. Jacoby Walter played the most in the playoffs.
Yeah, Grady Dick is DNPs. Yeah. So you can't. Now you have to make personnel choices. You have to make roster choices. You can't just keep. I mean, I could see them running it back due to their tight salary cap window, but I don't know if that's the best idea for them. I don't know.
They have some things that they can do in order to change up their supporting cast. Sandro Mamoukelishvili to me had a very good year in terms of field goal percentage, in terms of efficiency, but he has a player option at about 3 million. He probably will opt out of that. We'll see if they get priced out of that. They can use the team option on Jamal Shed. What I expect is something similar to what happened with Herb Jones in New Orleans, where they turned down the team option, but they signed him to like 3 years, 45 million. Shed was a really good backup point guard.
Oh, they've been known to find great talent in the second round and undrafted.
Boyles, I think, has potential to be.
And it's funny because go with the draft, they're like, oh, that's an F for Toronto because that pick doesn't make sense, and he turned out to be the glue guy. They love
athletes. They love athletes in that franchise. They always have. Even with Ujiri gone, I feel like they've scouted well, and I think Darko Rajakovic is a good coach. I feel like he's able to make lemonade out of lemons. Like they were able to turn Jamison Battle into a 3-point shooting weapon. And that's not easy to do.
So let's just wrap up Toronto with this. In your opinion, should they make changes, or do you just kind of refine around the edges and hope
if they find a team, and this is extremely unlikely, if they find a team that's willing to take on Quickly or Ingram, pull the trigger on it. That's what I would say. And I think it's more likely for Ingram because he has less years. Quickly has 32 million all the way guaranteed until 2029. That's going to be a top contract.
The only good thing is it doesn't go up. So it gets better a little bit. Not much, but
Ingram, I like him. He had a great regular season, but then he did it again. He goes in the playoffs and he no-shows. He's like the new James Harden.
But you know what? In the end, we should say they went from the bottom and they made it.
They played well.
So we should say
they were consistently good all year long.
We should say that's a good story that they made it.
And they win 7 games with the Cavs. I know the Cavs in the playoffs are a roller coaster ride, but that has to be commended that they won all of their home games in that playoff series. It shows it. And I mean, I got to credit Barnes. He was I don't know if he was top 3. Was he a finalist for a DPOY this year? I know that Wembanyama won. I know that Wembanyama won unanimously, but I think Barnes was one of the top 3.
That's why I didn't even look at it. If you win it unanimously, there's no top 3. He was
a great defensive player. He won Defensive Player of the Month a couple of times, and he just looked great in the Cleveland series. Like he looked like the one guy who Cleveland couldn't solve, and I don't know where his ceiling is. Like he averaged 18, 7, and 6, which is awesome. But like, is this a guy who can do Jokic levels numbers? No, because I feel like he's more of a guy who's more methodical in the way he plays and the way he scores. But can you do more to build around Barnes now that you know he's the top guy and it's not Ingram and it's not Barrett? Like that's what I wonder. And also in free agency, do you really like what can you do with the MLE? Because they do have room to do something with the mid-level exception. All right, Adam, let's talk about the LA Clippers as they try to grow their tree of prosperity. The Intuit Dome.
The Clippers, this is another team we've gone over so much during the season. I don't think we need to really get too deep into them because they had started off as the old men in the room, and you somehow had got all the old guys out. You got Harden to be like, I'm done here. You got Mathurin, who I can see them not sign to a deal and let the market sort of pick them and be restricted.
Not only did they get Mathurin in the deal where they traded away Zubac to the Pacers, they got the pick, which was a big win.
They did win the pick, which will probably be a guard. And it's like, well, do you go another small guard with Garland? And but you have this future of a team that had no picks and just old men and no hope. You have a semblance of you can turn it over. Now, does Kawhi fit into that? Realistically, no. But if he's happy there and they're happy with him, he has his ring. So he doesn't really care. So
Kawhi this was one of the healthiest seasons he's ever had. Now people can give every underlying conspiracy about why that was, about oh well he was getting paid on the table and now the payment's gone and now he has to actually play like in his contract like he's in a contract year and that's why he played healthy. Everybody can talk about that. But he averaged 28.6 rebounds a game. He got to the free throw line a lot. He shot 50% from the field. He almost led the league in steals. Like he had a great year.
yeah, and that's why if they're content with him elevating all these new young guys they're going to have on this roster now,
Mhm.
I'm not against it because are they a championship team? No, not really. Are they a terrible team? No, not really. So why not just draft good, develop these young guys that you have as opposed to just throwing old guy after old guy after old guy?
Well, that's how they started, where they just had all this age, and Bradley Beal, I think, played 6 games. Like he had like some type of a hip injury, and he was done. And it's unfortunate. And to be honest with you, he has a player option at 5 million. My assumption is he'll opt into it and he'll give it one more try in LA, but we'll see. Otherwise they have a lot of flexibility because of the fact that they have so many team options, because they were a team that was built for let's just get veterans and keep relying on them and Tyronn Lue to be able to make something out of it. And now they have to sort of flip the switch where they actually have to do some youth movements. So I can see him retaining Jordan Miller, Kobe Sanders, Cam Christie, all those young guys, but I can also see them letting go of Nick Batum, who's on the verge of retirement. Brooke Lopez arguably is on the verge of retirement. Is that fair to say? And
Yeah.
then Chris Dunn, we'll see. It's one of those things where you can go either or. I think the biggest advantage is that you don't have to retain John Collins, who had a really down year. He'd made 26 million. He's an unrestricted free agent. You don't have to keep him. You don't have to re-sign him. And then Bogdanovich, you can just dump him for the $16 million team option.
I think we can agree they don't need to be desperate, which is what they've been
Exactly. I
for
agree.
a
Because
long
what you
time.
can just do is reshuffle the chess pawns. You can just take the money that you would have had to give to Bogdanovich and Collins, and you just give it to Matherin, because Matherin's going to get very big money on an offer sheet. All right, this was a pleasant surprise, the Phoenix Suns. So this was a team that I really was very, very low on to start the season. I thought they would actually have the worst record in the league. They very much surprised to start. Jordan Ott found something. They were able to win. They were 10-5 in November. They were 11-5 in January. They sort of hit a rut after that. Because one of their, I don't want to call, I mean, would you call Dylan Brooks a reclamation project in Phoenix, or is that a little too far?
He's
Because he was good in Houston.
He was good wherever he was. It was just he decided to be a little quieter in Phoenix, and then the mojo came back to everybody as opposed to him running his mouth.
I mean, he averaged 20 points a game. He was shooting threes. He was getting in fights with everybody. He was a beast. But then when he broke his hand, that really kind of hurt him, because then they had to over rely on Devin Booker. Devin Booker, I've tried to make the case that I think he's a fringe Hall of Fame player, but he's on Supermax money, and I think it's deserved for him. The problem is that a team where Devin Booker is your star, and then you have to rely, and then your next best guy is Jalen Green, and then just a bunch of ancillary parts. It's not a team that it's a team that could make the playoffs. They made the playoffs after losing their first play-in game and then winning the second one against the Warriors. But then they got just easily swept by the defending champion Thunder at the time. And you could just see that they just didn't have horses in the race. But the regular season did show signs of life.
Well, we know that they're not a good team, and that was shown.
Talent-wise, they're not a great team, no.
Because, like with the Clippers, you were desperate, and then you made so many bad choices out of desperation. You don't have much in return. And you can even say what the desperation is. They give up a first-round pick to get Mark Williams, who I think they're just going to let go. And you had traded for Mark Williams and Nick Richards, and you shipped Nick Richards out.
Yeah, he went to Chicago. Yep.
You made all these sort of we need to win now desperation choices, and now you don't need to. But you put everything on Jalen Green, who just got injured, and it's just like, well, I don't know how good they really are. due to his
So
injury, but I don't know what they can do to get better, is sort of what I'm
so
saying.
so Jalen Green's interesting because he already had signed a decent extension with the Houston Rockets where he was originally drafted. Now, it was also a deal where there was like a play, it was only like 3 years long or 4 years long, and it was a player option. So it wasn't like a 3+1. So it wasn't like the worst deal in the world. It could have been it could have been a lot like it could have been a lot more damaging for Phoenix. But when he started, he had a knee injury. He barely played. He didn't seem like it didn't seem like he was going to get any playing time because you had Brooks and Booker getting a lot of the looks. When Brooks got hurt, Jalen comes in, and also Grayson Allen, I think, got hurt too. Jalen Green comes in. He had some very nice moments. He wound up averaging 18 points a game. He looked great against the Warriors. I know this is a small thing, but in the Warriors play-in game, he looked great. And he had some moments where I'm like, man, he is like actually like out hustling Curry. Like Curry is like is laboring trying to keep up with him. So he only played 32 games, but in terms of his sample size, I thought Green looked good, and I think he has a future in Phoenix.
He does, but like I said, what do you just take these positive vibes and know you've overachieved and hope to build on? Because there's no clear vision of how you
And
get out of
and
any
the
of
other
this.
problem is that you still got one more year of the dead cap of Bradley Beal at 19 million. So even though you do have like outside of Green and Booker, fairly low salary players and bargain basement guys, you still have to account for the 19 million that you had to buy out Bradley Beal for. And that's just a price that you paid for bringing him in the first place. And that was from that era with Durant that's already long past. But they are 20 million below the luxury tax limit. So I wonder if they can try a couple of things. I mean, do you think that they might try to get a deal where, say, they get another big man, like they let Mark Williams walk, and they
They
wind
got
up
Malawak, who did nothing, but hopefully they just took that as a red
Malawak
shirt year.
had more playing time, but he looked a little lost in the like when they got closer to the playoffs because he just wasn't used to running assignments. Colin Gillespie played great. He's an unrestricted free agent. I don't know if they'll be able to afford to keep him. That's going to be interesting because they also can, if they want to, they can let Gillespie go to a higher suitor, but they can keep Jordan Goodwin for less. They also really liked Rasheer Fleming, who was one of their rookies.
Yeah, who got minutes at the end and started off very
And
slow.
then there's the
But
Ryan Dunn Iguodaro combo, which is weird because Ryan Dunn's a power forward, but he can make threes. And Iguodaro is actually is plays like he is shaped like a 4, but he plays like a 5 because he's actually good at pick and roll.
so I guess we should just end it with Phoenix saying it's a good story that they made it out of the darkness and doldrums. It's just I don't know how you can improve upon that.
I think you can improve upon it if you add more talent, and I think Jordan Knott's creative enough to make something of it. But I just think from a talent perspective, they just don't have the guns.
All right. So there we have it. We have teams who did stuff and teams who need to do stuff. But I think just overall theme of this group is wholesale changes kind of will be needed for the old guard, and then
Mm-hmm.
the new guard just sort of know
And they're all,
you're
and from a salary standpoint, they're all kind of in the same wheelhouse. Like by the end of the regular season, they were all like just below the second apron. And now that there's an increase by $20 million, like now you got some room to do things, but you don't have enough room to make huge swings. And the only way you can make a huge swing is by trading your stars. And we talked about Milwaukee. That's very possible. We talked about a couple of other ones, like Miami might take some big moves, but overall, I do see a lot of standing pat unless they lump themselves into a big mega trade.
all right. And mega trades are a thing everyone loves. The five teams combining everything just to make it a Super Bowl. But
The truth is you have to because of how close the how
cap is,
restrictive the cap
yeah.
is, and you have to throw the salaries and you have to throw the allocations in.
All right. So for Andrew Reich, I'm Adam Murray. Have a good one.
Take care.